Okay, we got 7 o'clock, the meeting will come to order. We'd like to welcome everybody here. The invocation tonight will be given by Alderwoman Garrett and the pledge of allegiance to the flag by Alderman Cashin. If you would please rise.
Please pray with me. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this beautiful day and for its many blessings. We pray that you will be with all of us, our families, our schools, our businesses, and help all of us as we are dealing with the coronavirus and the devastation that it is causing. We pray that you'll be with our national leaders, with our military, with our first responders, with everyone who is dealing with difficult issues right now around the country. We pray that you'll be with this board and guide and direct us in all that we say and do. Be with us tonight and guide our decision making. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll, please.
Alderwoman Garrett.
Present.
Alderman Ellis. Here. Alderman Martin.
Here.
Alderman Barnett.
Here.
Alderman Perrette.
Present.
Alderwoman Cossett.
Here.
Alderman Cashin.
Here.
City Attorney Purdy.
Here.
And Presiding Mayor Phil Fisher.
All right, we have no recognitions tonight, so we'll move on with the approval of consent agenda items A and B. Probably our shortest consent agenda items we've ever had. So do we have a motion, do we have a comment or a question? Motion to approve, is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. We're voting tonight. Would you please go ahead and vote on your machines?
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, keeping with our current method of doing business, there'll be no department head report tonight. So we'll move on down to mayor discussion and reports. We have item A is discussion action of dimensional variance, Ronnie Morton, 103 East Main. This is in Ward 5. Mr. Edwards, you'll take us through this, and if there's anybody here to speak on it.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Mr. Morton is here representing Morton Holdings LLC. They are seeking a certificate of appropriateness and dimensional variance to use an existing residential structure as a professional office space. This property is in the Old Town Clinton district location. This is an allowed use in this district. The existing structure and lot do not meet the residential or commercial requirements of today's ordinances. This is the location. The applicant is seeking the following dimensional variances here. You see the lot width is required for commercial to be 100 foot. What this lot is 70 foot, so he's asking for a 30-foot variance here. Here we go. And then on the east side, you've got, he's asking for a 9-foot variance from the 20-foot required between two commercial structures there. And also with that, he's asking for a 5-foot variance from the landscape requirements due to the driveway going up the property line. On the west side, he's seeking a 5-foot variance from the 20-foot requirements with a fence. He is proposing to put a fence between the residential structure and the proposed commercial here. And then also this use would require 5 parking spaces, but 2 of those would be, or 3 would be on site and 2 would be on the street. And that can be approved just through the site plan review. This gives you just an overview of from the front of the building what the variances that are being requested. Again, the width of the lot is only 70 foot. as opposed to the 100. 9-foot variance to the east side, to the right side, as we look at it here. The 5-foot variance on the landscaping due to the driveway, and then on the right, a 5-foot variance, or on the left, a 5-foot variance. Article 16 gives us the requires the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for certain actions to be performed in the Old Town Clinton District. Section 1604 gives us consideration for granting dimensional variances for uses located on Jefferson Street and adjoining streets because the structures were built so close to the lot lines. Section 3004 gives you the criteria for granting a dimensional variance. The notice of public hearing was published, and this is the fence here at this location, minus the brick columns is what he's proposing to put between the proposed commercial and the residential. Notice of public hearing was published as required by our ordinance and properly posted as well. And the Planning Commission sends their recommendation for approval as submitted.
We have any comments from Ryan?
Certainly, I appreciate the opportunity to present to the board. The use that we've got proposing is essentially the same use that is actually being used and that this board approved less than a year ago, exactly next door. It's a lot almost identically the same size, almost identically the same construction. The board approved that one for a newspaper and marketing agency. What I'm actually proposing to put in here is the automatedattorney.com, which is a marketing agency for lawyers nationwide. And part of what we plan to do here is not only operate out of there, but I have a film studio in there and training when lawyers come in for training, by the automated attorney. And so that's the proposed use. One of the variances that's being requested has already been granted, not for me, but for the neighbor, because he too is too close, and you've already granted both, not only that use there right next door, but also the fact that the encroachment, if you will, because he didn't have enough space between his lot and mine either. And so that's effectively what we're asking for. The lot is not appropriate for any use in the district at all, and so what we're asking for is the ability to use it for an approved purpose, which is going to be office space use in the Old Town District. Part of the reason we're asking for it is in order to maximize the efficiencies of any repairs and improvements, and we will be improving the property. The tax benefits and such as that are going to be greater, therefore the ability to put more money into the property will be greater if it's approved for our proposed commercial use. We're not seeking anything that is different than anything that's been rejected for anyone else around here, and it's consistent with all the other property. Most of the property on that block is converted property from residential to commercial, just like Clay's property right next door. I would add that he's not here tonight, but Mike, now I've spoken with Mike next door about would he mind doing that. He's the one that actually suggested that I make it commercial, so he has no objection for the use that we're proposing there. Unlike some of my prior visits before this board.
Unlike what?
Unlike some of my prior visits before this board, where some of the neighbors didn't really appreciate the conversion.
Well, speaking of your prior visits before this board, there was a lengthy time, it was on a picture a few slides back, this board went to extreme circumstances to work with you in an effort to help you locate in that location where you are now.
Sure.
Why can't you build there?
This is an existing structure that I was able to purchase.
Okay? Before you moved to this location, and we had to work so hard to get you in, you were in an office building on Highway 80. Will this work in Highway 80?
And it would. I don't own property on Highway 80, but you could.
But there is other property available on Highway 80. I want to get where I'm driving here.
Okay.
The move with the Clinton Courier was a mistake. Make no doubt about it. A newspaper can run anywhere. What Old Town is losing is rooftops for people to live in okay, for houses that are livable, and they're losing, and in my opinion, let me say this, in my opinion, if we're not gonna use this as a rooftop, it should be used, and we should not negate any more space for non-sales tax producing entities. People will go to a lawyer's office because that's where they need to go. It's not a impulse stop. You don't drive by an attorney's office or an insurance agent's office or a real estate agent's office and say, ooh, I need to stop in there and see about it. You're going there because you have an appointment, you have a reason to go there. They can go anywhere. The ambiance of Old Town, which this board, this mayor's time in office has spent so much trying to build in this community, is being eaten up by non-sales tax producing entities moving into it and the removal of rooftops by businesses. And at some point, we're either going to have to stop spending money in Old Town and give up, or we're going to have to stop the this movement. Because if people don't have a reason to come to Old Town to shop or to live, then they don't have, then the very, the essence of Old Town is lost. The very reason people come down here no longer exists. And the ambiance that everyone wants to enjoy no longer exists because it's been eaten up with businesses that are inside former homes and are in, not in sales tax producing possibilities. So you've not talked about this. This is not an ambush.
No,
We've not talked about
No,
it.
we've absolutely talked about it, that's correct.
And I expressed my disagreement with this action then. And I just find it to be, anytime a space is taken up in Old Town that could be a home, we're taking away from what could be a walking district. Anytime we take away from a space in Old Town that could be a sales tax producing business by a non-sales tax producing business, we are hurting Old Town in its ability to draw customers. Now we've got real estate companies down here. We've got one that's going to move from one building to another. It's going to eat up the largest sales tax producing business possibility that we have. So, I don't know how to say this except that I should have had my eye better on the ball with the movement of the Clarion, of the Clinton Courier. It was in a fine building. It could have stayed where it was, or it could have moved down to anywhere else in town. They took away a home for people to live in. Now we're going to take away a second home. And I just think at some point the board needs to stop the process or just say, okay, fine. You know, we're going to give it up. Now, that's my thoughts on the matter. I open the floor for any other comments from the board.
Could the property not be sold? I mean, is that the reason? Because I think you made the comment it's not good for use of any other type, so we're trying to so does that mean, does that imply that the house can't be sold as residential and somebody can't move in there and use it for a home to live in? I don't understand.
It doesn't meet the requirements for a home site in Old Town. An Old Town site requires 80 feet, this one's 70.
Right.
So even to make it a residential property, I'd be here asking for a variance. Apparently, that's a variance that you would like rather than one for commercial. But either requires a variance unless I rely on the grandfathering clauses, which I would not rely on because it allows zero movement for the property, zero expansion of the property, zero rebuilding of the property. I'd be foolish to spend money improving property that then a tree falls on and I could do nothing with. I would have to have a variance regardless. And my view is in a district where there are approved uses, which this board is the one that created this as being a mixed district, that on a site that is not appropriate for either use, both of which are appropriate, then either use is just as appropriate. And so the mayor and I disagree on that point. I will point out that this property's been vacant for 6 years. I'm taking a vacant piece of property and coming in and putting money into it. I'm also taking that vacant piece of property and putting employees into it, employees that are going to eat out and go to Cups And also, there's going to be a training center, national training center, that people, instead of me renting space in Ridgeland and spending money at restaurants there, will be going to 303, will be going to the Pizza Shack. And so there will be some sales tax generating traffic for that. After the mayor and I spoke about this, my comment to him was, this thing's less than 1,300 square feet. I have no idea that any retail space is even interested in that. And he said, oh yeah, people are calling Tara all the time. I reached out to her and said, hey, I'm perfectly willing to rent this to retail. Do you have anybody? I have not received any inquiries from that, and that's been a month.
You also told me it could be rented to a college student.
It absolutely can be rented to a college student.
So let's tell both stories.
No, it absolutely can be rented to a college student,
I
but
deal
it,
with enough attorneys to understand that, you only give one side. Let's tell both sides of the story.
no, it absolutely, no, I'm not denying that or anything.
In the past, this has been a residence, correct?
For 6 years, it's been vacant.
In the past, it's been a residence, correct?
Certainly.
Has there ever been an effort to sell it?
That was gonna be my question. If it's been vacant for 6 years, I could understand if you made the statement, it's been vacant for 6 years with a for sale sign in the yard, right? But have you owned this property for the 6 years that it's been there?
I've
How'd
owned
you
it for
come
6
across
months.
How'd you come across it?
It became available on the market and I bought it.
That's your story, you're sticking to it.
It became available on the market and I bought it. Yes. I mean, that's how property gets bought and sold. And I paid top dollar for it.
It wasn't a previous client of yours that came and visited you in the office.
It absolutely is a previous
like you
client of
told me.
mine. It absolutely is a previous client of mine, but it became on the market and I bought it. That's how property in this area winds up selling.
Word of mouth,
Yes.
not on the market, word of mouth.
I mean, I don't know the difference there. What I know is
The
that there was a
difference
willing
is,
buyer
was
and a
there a
willing
for sale
seller,
sign
and the willing
put up
buyer paid top dollar to purchase.
Was there a for sale sign put up in the yard?
There was no reason to put a for sale sign up in the yard.
Because
The buyer said they were expressed an interest, the seller rather expressed an interest. I expressed an interest in buying. We reached an agreement, and the property was purchased. If this property isn't put to commercial use, it will go to residential use.
yes,
I mean, I will still be back before this board seeking a variance for residential use. There's no doubt about that, because again, it doesn't meet the requirements of residential use. But the money that I'm able to put into this property will be diminished. This board has gone to great lengths to make the Old Town District a historic district. And the sole benefit for that, in my view at least, is the tax benefits that come to property owners that improve property for commercial uses. There is no benefit for residential uses, but there are significant benefits to a property owner that does improvements to old properties for commercial uses. I'm wanting to take advantage of what this board has done to save and revitalize by putting money in this property that otherwise, if it's going to be rental property, it's going to be designed as college rental property. I'll do the bare minimum to have it up to code and let college students live there, as you might imagine. But I would like to do something nicer. With respect to the suggestion that somehow having this structure that looks like this in Old Town, and instead having the structure continue to look like this in Old Town, changes the ambience of Old Town, I don't agree with. I don't even understand. The ambience of Old Town is not affected. In fact, it's improved because you've got a property owner there that is willing, able, and has significant reasons to spend money on that property, to keep the property up, to keep it looking nice and such as that. The reason I haven't done anything with it so far is because it obviously takes 2 and 3 months to get through this process. And until I know, am I converting this for commercial or am I doing this for residential, the repairs are different. The quality of the repairs are different. I don't need a kitchen for the automated attorney's offices. I do obviously need a kitchen for rental property offices.
Let me tell you one thing I think has happened too. I tried both those properties myself at one time. And one thing about it, when people get ready to sell an Old Town house, it's like becomes a piece of gold. And they ask more than leaving appraisals for. And then this house, and I thought, well, do I stretch out and try to buy this thing, but then go inside? It was just way too much for my pocket, but what's bad is it does take people who've got resources or deep pockets, whatever you want to say, to be able to take some of these properties and buy them and then refurbish them. And, but in fact, I did. I'm going to tell you, I tried to buy both those properties and when they came available, and they just asked way too much. Just out of sight.
Roy, do we have an inventory breakdown of the properties in Old Town, residential versus commercial?
No.
I'm wondering what the critical mass is, and I understand where the mayor's coming from. I mean, the issue with Old Town has been, for my 12 years on the board, has been a constant tug of war of getting the balance of residents down there to make the Old Town district viable, and then businesses to support the residents. It's a constant flowing dynamic. And we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here, because there's nothing that Mr. Morton's doing here that is illegal. I hate to use that word, but there's nothing illegal about it. Is it the best use of the property in Old Town? You can build a case that it's not, but by the same token, I'm a free market kind of guy, and if it was purchased legally and it's going to be used for a legal purpose, and I have a tendency to support that. But I would like to know at some point in time, perhaps in a future work session, what is the critical mass of residential properties that are out there right now that could be subject to commercial conversion? And
The question to that is all of them.
well, some of them are already retail, some of them are already commercial. You got, so what's out there? And I think once we can quantify what that is, then look at, do we need to do a substantive change to our zoning and bring this to a different conclusion. But in front of us right here, right now, I don't think now is the time nor the place for that conversation.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Y'all will please vote.
Push the button.
Who do you like it?
Everybody.
Everybody vote, Wilson?
No, it was me.
Motion passes 6-1.
Item B, discussion action approved to accept $19,226.69 from the Hinds County Board of Supervisors to reimburse Clinton, Mississippi's Police Department for the RevCord 911 recording suite approved on June 2nd, 2020. Thought this one was pretty straightforward to the point. The city had requested half of this amount. The Ricky Moore at Emergency Management gave us 100%. So recommended that to the Board of Supervisors, and they passed that along. We'll be using our 911 recording system to improve it and to make it a better operating system for us. Do you have any questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If y'all would vote, please.
that second one on purpose?
I double tapped.
Gotcha.
I double tapped.
We need to vote again.
Yeah.
We're getting ready for November.
No,
Most of the dead people.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item C, discussion action, approve acceptance of bids received on August 12, 2020, and awarded to the lowest and best bidder, Pavecon, in the amount of $708,748 for the 2018 Transportation Alternatives Arrow Drive and Cynthia Road Multi-Use Path Federal Aid Project, and for the mayor to execute the bid package documents and contracts for the project improvements. Again, this is the walking path that goes from Arrow Drive to Traceway Park that we've been talking about since 2017, and it's finally come up in the system and rotated for us so that we can bid it. All the work has been done. We had, I think we had set the project to come in at $709,000. It came in at $748,000. We had two other bidders who came in the $900,000 plus range. So Bill Owens did his due diligence on this. Pavecon is found to be a qualified and capable contractor, and this is who he's recommending we award this to. Questions or a motion?
This is a pretty cool project right here. If there are no questions by anybody else, I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If y'all would vote, please.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we have any other business to come before the board tonight?
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to get an update on the Albritton property. I've gotten a phone call from the family, and I understand there's an interested buyer that wants to move the house. And I've also heard that they filed for an emergency hearing in court to delay the demolition until they could get that worked out, and there's a hearing in the morning at 9 o'clock or something like that. And wasn't sure that I knew completely all what the details were and what the city plans were on demolition and whether we ought to consider giving them a little more time.
The city's plan for demolition was, as per the motion, that was voted on 6-1, in our last meeting, was to do the demolition tomorrow. They have in fact filed a emergency injunction with the courts, and Will has a 9 o'clock meeting with that emergency discussion. A lot of drama's been played out in the last 2 weeks. I know, Jim, you've been part of some emails that have been sent to some people here in town about this.
No, I have not sent an email to anybody in town.
Okay, well, I guess the name I read was wrong. But we passed this on the 14th. This new buyer story that we found out about today is on the 10th. Monday, Friday, I had, sitting in the back of the room, Keith came in and was asking me about the house, that the family had contacted him. And then the motion today came in to delay everything, or request a delay. And so tomorrow at 9 o'clock, there's going to be a hearing. And based on that, at this point, right now, based on that hearing, we'll move after that. Well, I don't know if you can say anything about the hearing other than we're having one, but.
Yeah, at this point, they've filed a motion for a TRO, a temporary restraining order, and a preliminary injunction. We will argue that tomorrow morning at the Chancery Court. Obviously, if they were to be victorious, we would be limited from going forward based on the judge's orders. If we were to succeed at court, we would proceed with the approved board action as it currently stands.
Did you have you or the mayor meet with this prospective purchaser?
Hadn't heard anything about them until late this afternoon.
No, yeah, the only thing I know about a cross-ex purchaser is sometime after they filed the injunction, he filed, he being the attorney, which is Mr. Jason Weeks, filed an affidavit on behalf of one of the siblings, I believe it was Richard Albritton, and I'm not aware if he represents all three or just that one sibling, and one of the assertions in that affidavit was that on August 10th, a prospective purchaser had come forward, and that's the extent of what it said. It
Is that a
didn't give it,
purchase of the house or the purchase of the entire property?
it didn't elaborate.
Is there a contract, is there an actual contract pending on the purchase? Or just somebody came forward and
So
said,
that
I'm just
said
gonna
that
buy it?
a potential buyer has come forward was the extent of what it said.
So then what does it take to be a potential buyer? More to your point is, can I be a potential buyer by saying, hey, I think I might want it? Or do I have to go through some kind of legal to show that I am putting up money and I'm gonna buy?
And I certainly intend to pursue that line of questioning at the hearing tomorrow.
Assuming there's a potential buyer, which I don't at this point, because I haven't received anything directly from the family at all, so I'm going by rumor mill here, okay? But assuming there was a potential buyer, how long would it take to go through the process? If you think in terms of buying your own house, you know, how long it took from when you said, I'll buy it until you actually bought it and owned it. Have they given any indication on anything that you might have received that they're in the process of, or just that statement, there's a potential buyer?
Just that statement.
Okay.
I did hear from family, and I think that the proposal they have is to move the house, not buying the whole house in place in the 13 acres. Only to give time to move. I don't know how long it takes to move a house either. They told me that they were trying to get the paperwork drawn up to have it confirmed. I don't know if they'll have that before 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, again, 2 weeks ago, I expressed my concern and my desire to save the house if at all possible, and I still retain that too. I would hate to see that house end up in a landfill if there is some prospects out there. But I guess really there's two things: either let the legal process go through at 9 o'clock in the morning and see what they present to the judge, or you know, if we made a motion to reconsider and gave them 2 more weeks till the next board meeting, and then see what happens in that 2 weeks, whether there'd be any harm doing that as opposed to, you know, lawyer time and all that stuff going to court tomorrow. Again, that the house is, you know, for the next 2 weeks, there's nothing going to happen to it. I have been in the house, and it's not fixing to cave in, and there's no real problem with it. That house is solid as a rock. They don't build them like they do in 1930. It's got a couple of water leaks in there, but that house is not anywhere near the condition of any other structure that we've ever demolished in the 7 years I've been on this board.
Has anybody else walked through the house? I walked through it this afternoon.
And Mayor, I'm curious why you were so interested in protecting the house that we just voted on a minute ago, but you were anxious to demolish this house, which has much greater historical value than the
I
house.
wasn't more
we were
anxious
looking at.
to tear down one or the other, Ms. Garrett, and you can interpret it any way you choose. We've had a house here that has been under, and I mistakenly told this board it was 3 years, almost to the day at our last meeting. It actually was 3 years and 7 months, and now 2 more weeks, that this has been in process. The house that we talked about earlier has not been in process at all.
But it
This
has-
house has been in process. Big difference. You can't compare an apple and an orange and come up with the same thing, Dr. Garrett. You need to understand that. So as we go through this process, this is a house that we've had a discussion, it's been in discussion numerous times, and was discussed at great length at our last board meeting. I told you then they would try to extend this play And here we are, 2 weeks later, now Mr. Martin's suggesting 2 more weeks. I don't care one way or the other about this house, except that we have a process that we've gone through with this house. It's the same process that we've gone through with every other house in town, and yet we've moved to tear those houses down while not this one. And it seems to me that we're being more than inconsistent here, just because of, well, for whatever reason you might have. And it seems to me that the whole idea of trying to compare the two is just unfair on your part and absolutely ridiculous. At the end of the day, we've had a process in this house, I'm talking about the Albritton house, that we had not done on this other house. Do you agree with that or disagree with that? It's a yes or no question. Have we had a process or not?
I'm agreeing that this house has been through a process.
Okay.
I'm agreeing to that. But based on what you had to say about protecting the integrity of Old Town, I'm just a little baffled over why you weren't willing 2 weeks ago to, to give the family a little longer time to get it moved somewhere else.
Yeah, 3 years and 8 months later, just because you come to a meeting, Ms. Garrett, and we're talking about something, doesn't mean that on a day-to-day basis, it hasn't been talked about for a great deal of time and tried to be worked through and brought to the board. Again, you're comparing apples and oranges. A process has been gone through here, and if you choose to ignore the process, that's certainly your prerogative.
And you say you have not met with any potential buyer of this property.
Can you reread the minutes on that of what I said? Absolutely not.
Okay.
You think I would lie to you, Ms. Garrett? Another yes or no question. Thank you, Ms. Garrett. But the truth of the matter is no. I have not talked to a buyer on this project. I was unaware until this afternoon there was an offer made. Now, I've talked to somebody on this project who says that they can take the house and move it, but they said they're not going to buy it.
We're not getting caught up on semantics here, because I understand the purchaser is gonna pay $1 for it and move it. Now,
I don't understand that because I haven't seen an offer on it.
If that's a purchase, then that's a purchase, but
that is a
it's really just to
Well,
take
then,
the
then
house
I'm gonna ask y'all to
and
lay out
save the house.
everything you know, Jim, instead of holding it back. Because all we've got in the city is a statement. We have a buyer. Are you buying the land? Are you buying the house? Are you gonna pay market value? Are you gonna pay scrap value? We don't know. All it says is we're gonna have a buyer. Do you know more that you can enlighten us with?
Well, I don't know.
No, wait. This buyer came August 10th. That's when it's dated. Am I not correct? August 10th? That's when they said they had a buyer?
Yes, sir, and if I can clarify to give the exact wording, and to Alderman Cashin's question about moving versus property. The exact wording of the affidavit is, first, on August 10th, 2020, potential buyers for the entire property, including the home, came forward.
Buyers?
Buyers is the word used here. That's the entirety of the sentence, which would suggest the property plus the home. It does go on to say, in a later paragraph, as I understand it, many in the Clinton community don't want the house destroyed, and either a potential buyer who might want to renovate or move the house would seem a better option than demolition, which would suggest that the first buyers, I don't know how firm that would suggest they were or not.
And as I understand, and we're going on the date timing here, person in the back of the room, he found out about it on the 14th. The 10th is before the 14th.
You asked me what I had heard. I have heard that there were 3 solid interested parties in it. Probably one of those was the reference in the Kent. And I'd heard that a new party, first that I'd heard of was today, and I don't really like to drop names, but I guess he's in the back of the room, Kyle Keith. The family said that they had reached an agreement verbally, and the lawyers were drawing up the paperwork for him to buy the house for $1 and move it. And they said that he met with you twice today to discuss that. That's again what I had heard.
I think he met with me once today, and he met with me once Friday.
Okay.
And at that time, no legal documents were drawn up. Nothing was presented, and it was represented to me as this would not be a purchase. So, and I told you that up front. I mean, is there anything else that you know that you could pass along to the board to help them in a decision tonight?
Well, that's it.
It's like dragging,
There were three
it's like
interested,
dragging, pulling our teeth to get it.
One and one was here in the room tonight that could speak to it too. They said they were just waiting on getting the lawyers to draw up the paperwork. Lawyers aren't always as quick as the clients would like to have that done. I heard that they had reached an agreement today, and they had filed legal paperwork on there. And if there was, they could not find a judge today to consider the temporary restraining order, the injunction, and that hearing was going to be at 9 o'clock in the morning for it, but that they intended to follow through with that, get the paperwork done, and get it moved as quickly as you can. And if that falls into some other people that you've got to have the movers and line those things up and get it done, and I'm not sure how firmed up that is, but the general concept, the general agreement was there in place. And again, we can have a court hearing in the morning, I guess, too, but it sounds like that they're making good progress on this. We kind of asked if we had a system in place, and what's different about this one. The whole thing, the 3 years, the last 2 weeks, the last 6 months, or whatever, what I'm focusing on, the bottom line is the house. It's a historic house, and it's not in that bad shape. Where is the rush to tear this thing down if there's a prospect, exercise any opportunity to do that? If this really was a hazard or something, that would be a different deal. Like I said, I've never seen a request to demolish something that's in the condition this is in, good condition. What we've seen is they've always been in deplorable, and there's nothing salvageable about it, and demolishing it is the only reasonable option left there. That's what is different about this case and about this house, and it's there. And rather than having the courts battle it out, and again, one of the headlines in the Courier this week too was the Mississippi Supreme Court ruled against the rehearing request on 110 and 112 Fleet Street over here, and part of that announcement talked about what historic-minded Old Town was and how we worked hard for many years trying to find someone to preserve those buildings, and here we are looking to demolish a very historic house on a whim, when it could very well be saved.
Can I, hang on, Jim, hang on. You're doing your lawyer, you're preaching again. First question, the legal papers you say are filed for tomorrow. You said in the same sentence they are part of the purchase. Now, is it part of the purchase what's filed tomorrow, or is it an injunction to stop?
I have not seen the papers. I've heard there was a request for an injunction to stop demolition so that they
Stop
could.
demo to stop, not to purchase.
I don't know, I haven't read it.
I see.
I would think it'd be hand in hand.
I see.
That would be, you would stop it to give it time to purchase. Now, whether it said that in there or stop it, I don't know what.
Next question, where is it listed on the historic register?
It's in the survey and
That's not a historic registration. That is a historic list of homes. That's not a historic registration. Is it on the city or state or national historic register?
it's on whatever the designation was that we got for the Old Town District, and I forget exactly what the term is too, but you're right, there is a more important national register than there is whatever the historic district that we got approved, and it is one of the approved houses that was in that.
There are 98 houses on that list, I believe at last count, and not all of them would qualify for historic structures, just so you'll understand you know, what you're saying there. Look, I want action on this house taken. It's been going on long enough, and if this is what it takes to get it to go forward, I don't want to have any issues with it as long as it's moving. But again, and I just point this out for the board to consider, we get up to the lip log here, and all of a sudden we got another buyer, a mysterious buyer, more than one buyer, buyers, but it's really going to be moved. Honestly, I don't know what's going to happen with the house. You can extend it for a week, you can let the court rule tomorrow and extend it for 2 weeks or 6 weeks or a year. Maybe it'll actually get moved, I don't know. But at some point, what we've done in the past with this structure hasn't worked. And we can try to inflate it to any level that you want to inflate it to as far as its importance. But it's been abandoned for, anybody have any idea how many years?
1990.
Since 1990. Just for reference, I was elected to the Board of Aldermen in 1992. So it's been out there for a long time, neglected, unkept, and the grass has been cut. Not that we end up to send notices for that. But if this board wants to go another couple of weeks with it, or they want to wait and see what the judge says tomorrow, and that's fine. All you got to do is make a motion. But you just continue to extend this deadline. I would like to know when you're going to be satisfied, Jim, that you've taken care of this and an action can be taken on this house.
When I'm satisfied that there really isn't prospects for it too. And I think I would like to make a motion to reconsider.
I still have something to say.
I can make a motion, you can still comment on it, but
Yeah,
if you
you
have a
comment.
comment first, go
I
ahead.
got you. No.
But you gonna make a motion to reconsider?
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the authority for the public works director to demolish this property until, I guess, 2 more weeks. That would give us till our next regular board meeting and the day after that, so that we could have an updated report at our next meeting on at the first or the second.
Next regular board meeting.
For the next regular board meeting, we can update on that. If there has been no progress and no prospects, then we'll move forward with the demolition.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll open that up with a definition of what is a prospect.
Well, I don't want to hear what they say.
So just anybody that calls and says, I'm a prospect.
I don't want to set a firm rule that's got to be in writing, but I certainly would think that that anybody that, if anything happens in the next 2 weeks, got to put something in writing before they come back to us. But if there was some other story, I'd listen to it, but yeah, I would want something in writing from someone that was contemplating moving, buying, whatever the term is they have.
Is that part of your motion?
No,
No?
just if they come back and report. in the next
Keith, you had
2
something
weeks.
you want to say?
Yeah, I think we're getting wrapped up on something that when somebody else comes in here that's in another part of the city, I mean, I've heard this is a historical place, it's a historic part of the city. I've heard a lot of excuses. We've got buyers, this and that. But when a house comes up in another part of the city that the board might not consider as important or as historical as this one is, okay? Are we going to show as much consideration and want to bend with the person in a neighborhood that's not as historical as this is, as we have this one? Last 2 weeks, I was on board with Ms. Garrett. 2 weeks to give them time enough to come down here and get the stuff out of the house. As far as I'm concerned, prospective buyers can happen every single time. I mean, we did it this 2 weeks. There was supposed to be something done. Now we get to the end of this 2 weeks, there's prospective buyers. We get to the end of the next 2 weeks, there's prospective buyers. Well, and the thing is that 2 weeks, I mean,
when does anything ever really happen in 2 weeks? You know, it's a longer procedure than that. And I bounce up and down on the fact that, am I gonna give Bob the same amount of consideration when he comes in here, when his house is getting rough and he hasn't done anything? 1990, this house has been sitting there since 1990, vacant, and nobody has been able, nobody's come and got any of the stuff out of it. There's been nobody that's bought it since then. Nobody's decided to come into it and take out all of the expensive wood that some people were commenting about that's in there, and things of this sort. But now we're right up to the moment, and we want to push it off further and further and further. I guess I think that the 2 weeks we gave them in the beginning to come and get your stuff after 20 years, 25 years of it being vacant and nobody being there, I think that it was time to go ahead and get something acted on. And but I was sympathetic to the family. You know, here's a little bit of time. It's not what you asked for, but you did get it. And now we're here with a whole nother ball of stuff that we're being asked to consider. Oh, well, this person might buy it. Well, this person doesn't decide to buy it. There's 2 more prospective buyers. So now we're going to talk to this one. Now we're going to talk to this one. Now we're going to talk to this one. And where does that end? You know, at what point does the board go, okay, well, this is the 4th time now that we give you 2 more weeks. So are we going to continue on that line, or are we just going to go ahead and let the system that has started, they filed their injunction, they have their legal play on what they want to happen and try to make happen with their injunction. If that goes through, then hey, we have to do what we're told to by law. But if it doesn't go through, then we move through with what we have already established we were going to do. That's what I think we should do.
I would answer your question real quickly. You know, would I do this for any other house anywhere else in town? And I can say absolutely, and without qualifications, yes. If there was a house that was salvageable and the owners were really trying to do something, absolutely I would give them time. Now, if it was not salvageable, there was no hope, we really thought they were jerking us around, then no. But I don't see that in any shape, form, or fashion here on it, and that's why, and we're not up to the 4th or 5th extension either. 2 weeks was a pretty short time frame. I think some was accomplished during the 2 weeks, but that wasn't enough to get it done on it. But if I had reservations that I thought nothing was going on, I wouldn't have said a word tonight. But I really genuinely think that that family is sincere in trying to not see this 1930s house end up in a landfill. And I think
Can I ask a question?
I've been dying to. Go ahead.
I
Mike has the floor for the next 45 minutes.
No, I certainly don't need that. I'm really trying to grasp where you're coming from with that. How you're saying that the family doesn't want to see this house go to a landfill, when on May 26, 2020, they received the bid from Mark Parkman to tear the house down. I don't understand your logic. You're saying on one hand that it doesn't, that the family doesn't want to see it go to a landfill and be destroyed, but they sent us a copy of the agreement to tear it down. So I'm not sure how you get to that point where you're saying, and with that the family doesn't want to see it torn down when they've made arrangements to tear it down. And to the other point where you referenced that the board was so willing, and I'm paraphrasing, but you use the word to tear down on a whim. I personally take some exception to that, because I don't think that there's been anything about this that's been a whim. I walked through that house and I'm wondering just in the last 3 years, much less the last 30 years, how much maintenance has been done to preserve anything in that house. Because I'm not an architect, I'm not a structural engineer, I don't know what, I walked through and was in the house for about 5 minutes and couldn't wait to get out because I thought the floor was going to give way. I may be wrong, but I looked and saw ceiling tiles falling down, I saw plumbing problems, I saw a house that was in absolute total state of disrepair, that indicates to me that the owners or the caretakers or whomever it is that was responsible for maintaining that house hadn't lifted a finger to take care of anything. The back porch was falling down, the windows are open, the doors were open. There's no effort, from what I could see, if that were my property, to secure that property for any type of preservation. And this is a pattern. There's a pattern that we're seeing. Go back and read the letter that Ms. Albritton sent us. You had a buyer, well, that fell through. We had another buyer, well, that fell through. Well, we thought we were going to do this, that fell through. And here we are, 3 years down the road. There comes a time when enough is enough, and enough's enough. If they wanted to preserve this house, then they could have figured out in the last 30 years how to preserve it. But by their own admission, they have sought out a demolition contract. So to intimate that the board is doing something on a whim that the property owners have already committed to doing, I think is perhaps a little inaccurate of a statement. Now, to your specific motion, I don't know if this is a question for you or a question for council, because I'm trying to understand what the purpose of your motion is. If the court's going to hear this tomorrow, and the court's going to say, City of Clinton, you've got to give them, pick a number, 30 days.
They're asking for 60 days.
Okay.
Is the preliminary injunction they're asking for.
So the court gives 60 days. Of what value is this motion?
It avoids the court hearing. I think they would cancel the court hearing if we gave them 2 more weeks. There would be no need for temporary.
How do we know that it's going to cancel the court hearing? How in the next, it's 7:56, how in the next 13 hours are we going to be assured that there's not going to be a court hearing and there will be a written document presented to the mayor, and hopefully he would forward that to the board, saying that there's not a prospective buyer, but there is a contract in place? Because, yeah, lawyers work slow, but I can tell you, we've all bought and sold houses. You can get a letter of intent pretty quick.
Well, I can't tell you that there wouldn't be a hearing. I can try and contact them tonight and see if the board does vote to extend that 2 weeks, see if that would cause them to withdraw their petition to the court. I will say that their petition is not for 2 weeks, their petition is for 60 days, so I don't know that granting them 2 weeks would incline them to withdraw their petition, because what they want is, or what they're asking for is 60 days.
If we couldn't get it done in the last 2 weeks, what's to say that we're going to get anything done in the next 2, or the next 2, or the next 2? Personally, I'm inclined to let the court decide what, and give us the flexibility, or the flexibility, the insulation, if you will, to follow what the court tells us to do. If the court rules that they need 60 days, they're entitled to 60 days, then so be it. We give them 60 days. But these continual motions to kick this down the road, to me, is just let the court do what the court wants to do. What they feel is right, then let's comply.
Mayor,
Yes.
you communicated in an email that, like, today's the 18th, that on the 19th, you were going to push down the house.
That's what your motion said.
I'm good. I just want to make sure that I want to make sure.
The motion that was made by Ms. Garrett and everybody that Mike voted for said 2 weeks ending tonight, and then
I just want to make sure.
the push down would begin tomorrow morning.
So, understanding that there's a court hearing tomorrow
Yes.
at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yes.
are we going to wait until that court hearing before we push things down?
No. I mean, if the board takes no action tonight and the court hearing rules no, the family case is denied. I'm using the wrong terms here. What the Albritons want to do is they say no to, then we're moving forward at that point based on your motion.
I'm
To
good.
bring
I'm
it
just
down.
trying to understand the tactics, the tactical part. So the hearing's at 9 o'clock. Are we gonna wait for the outcome of that hearing
Yes.
before we start pushing?
Yeah, we've already set that in motion. Will called and I called Dexter this afternoon to make sure they knew to not do anything until after the court proceedings.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
So, just a point of clarification or a point of order, then, would the motion need to be amended to say, to reconsider the timing of it? The timing of the demolition? Or are we covered, because if the board's action was to tear it down at such and such time on Wednesday morning, do we need to take board action to allow the wait for the hearing? I guess that's a...
Yes, sir. In my opinion, the board action that has currently been approved is to move forward with the demolition tomorrow morning, and absent the court telling us not to, that would be what would happen. So if the board wanted to prevent that, notwithstanding the court action, I think action to that effect would need to be taken.
I'm not sure.
Sorry if that was unclear.
So what you're
I'm not
saying,
sure that you answered his
what he's
question.
basically saying is
I'm
that,
not sure.
Yes, he did. If you were an attorney,
I
he
lied.
had it perfectly.
I laughed too far into lawyer. I realized about halfway through I was too far into lawyer.
Maybe I can clarify or help to clarify. What you're asking is, do we need to take a board action to prevent us from taking any action at 7 o'clock in the morning when the court hearing is
Yeah,
live?
the board's already voted to take an action.
That's
Do we
right.
need to take a vote to delay that action?
No.
Well, until
The
after.
court is at 9 o'clock. So they go to court, and it lasts, I don't know, 2 hours. At 11 o'clock, he calls, he says, the court voted for a 60-day extension. Then we don't do anything. If he calls back and says the court voted against what they wanted to do, then at any point after that, it could come down.
And
So-
maybe
And
I
that's
just,
being done because Will and I called Dexter and told him to put it off until the court proceedings could move through.
I'm good.
That's not,
and I thought you meant to grant the additional 2 weeks, even if the court ruled in our favor. I thought that's where you were going, so I apologize.
So do we need a motion or anything?
Now, we
There's
have
a
a motion.
motion on the table.
we have a motion and
We have a
somebody
motion on the
seconded it.
table to delay for 2 weeks with nothing more specific than that.
So your motion though is
To delay for
compare.
2 weeks.
So if
they
they were
can-
to say no, we're going to give them 2 more weeks, even if the court ruled tomorrow no, then you're asking, we're voting to give 2 weeks.
I think if we vote to give them 2 more weeks, I think the lawyers would agree that the hearing tomorrow is not needed and would wait until, see what happens in
It
2
but
weeks.
Jim,
It would
I would
be a
much
court-
rather
it would-
put my confidence in the courts, the judge.
Then to put our confidence in us,
And if
To put our confidence in lawyers that we don't have any control over, we don't have any input over, we don't know what they're doing, we don't know what the process is. Yeah, I'd much rather have a judge tell us that y'all need to give them 60 days than to have an attorney say we can do this in 10 days, this in 14 days, and then come back 2 weeks later and it's still not done. Absolutely.
Well, that, and if I'm in a position, I don't know how much I agree with the lawyers would back off on that, because if you think about it, if I'm asking for 60 days, if I think that I have any good skin in that, if I think I'm gonna win that or have any inkling that I'll come out on the good side of that, then I don't think there would be me backing off to get 2 weeks. I think I'd go ahead and try to get my 60 days. So I don't know, it's according to how sure those lawyers are what they're getting, because now if they were thinking we're just gonna try this as a 60-yard pass into the end zone, just a Hail Mary, and see if it works, well then us doing it, they might, if we gave the 2 weeks, they might go, whoa, okay, well they gave us 2 weeks, let's get out of this court thing, because we wasn't pretty sure we were gonna do anything with it. But if they're sure of themselves, I don't think that an action of 2 weeks, I think they would go right on with the court hearing and try to get their 60 days. I don't know how much I trust it to.
Let me ask a question for the 2 attorneys who've been in court before. If we don't do anything tonight, y'all don't do anything tonight, and then tomorrow the court says, no, I'm sorry, if the board says, let's go 2 more weeks, and then the court rules against the family. Okay? That means that, could they come back and try another level of court or in another court to get 60 more days at the last minute in 2 weeks? Or is it done, is it one and done?
You can't relitigate the same thing twice, and if there was a
Yeah.
different circumstances to warrant a second one, yes, but you don't just keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Can they appeal to a higher court if they get denied in county court? Can they go to the Mississippi Court of Appeals?
They could attempt to, yes. I would be surprised for the Court of Appeals to take up that, but theoretically, yes.
And I would think, Keith, you're asking about the 60 days, again, I hadn't seen the petition either. I sort of envision our 2 weeks that they would come back and show us signed paperwork, documents, proof they're gonna do it, things like that. Probably, again, I'm guessing the 60 days would give them time to get all the paperwork done and actually get the house moved. It is probably, you know, sounds like, or what the thing is, after 2 weeks, they came back and had signed paperwork. We've got the house mover lined up and he's gonna be week after next or something like that. You'd have that time frame for us to consider only, but I'm guessing that's where the 60 days comes from.
Jim, just another question in your motion. If in 2 weeks, they don't have any paperwork, as you referred, as you would expect them to have or something to show for it, is there anything in your motion that would say, okay, you know, this is it?
No, but if they came and didn't have anything, I'd have a hard time giving it to them again, but I'm not gonna draw a hard line in the sand.
So you're gonna leave it open-ended? I'm trying to understand the motion, because at some point, I'm gonna be called on to take action. And anything happens to you in the next 2 weeks, and you don't show up to the next meeting, and we don't have any legal paperwork, if all you say is, we're gonna give you 2 more weeks, then you've left it open-ended for me to interpret?
Right, at the end of 2 weeks, if we don't say, okay, that's a good deal, let's stop the demolition, then it gets demolished Wednesday, the 7 o'clock the next day.
Okay. And that's in his motion?
That's,
Okay,
yeah,
that's good.
that's what I wrote down.
All right, we'll make sure, because I just need to have a clear motion to move forward. Any other discussion or comments on this issue? Okay, who made the second?
Nobody's second.
Jan made the second. All right, if y'all would vote, please.
So just,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, so just to make sure, voting yes is voting with Jim, no on this is against it. Got it?
Correct.
Right?
And it, I don't have it in the system, so.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do it.
Oh, okay, you're right. All right, then, Jim, would you restate your motion? Letting everybody know again.
Move that we reconsider the authority that we gave to the Community Development Director to demolish this property for the next 2 weeks, and that the family, a representative of the family, needs to report back to us at our next meeting in 2 weeks for an update, and if they do not provide an update or an update satisfactory to the board, then the Community Development Director and the Public Works can proceed with demolition.
Okay, is that good with your second?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. All right, everyone's heard the motion and the second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed the motion?
No.
No.
Okay,
Chairs in doubt, let's do a roll call.
all right. Okay. Alderwoman Garrett,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis,
Aye.
Alderman Martin,
Yes.
Alderman Barnett,
No.
Alderman Perrette,
Negative.
Alderwoman Constant,
Yes.
Alderman Cashman.
No.
That's 1, 2, 3, that's 4 ayes and 3 nays.
All right, do we have any more business to come before the city?
I move we adjourn.
Yeah, but, Mayor, can I
I'm sorry.
Sorry. To clarify my charge from the board with regard to the vote that just took place, I will attempt to have the attorney withdraw his petition based upon our granting an additional 2 weeks. If he declines to do so and wishes pursue a 60-day injunction. I assume the board wants me to challenge that and move forward with the additional 2 weeks we've granted, or how's the board wish me to proceed
I just,
for purposes of court
I
law?
interpreted it either tomorrow they got 60 days or they got 2 weeks. Isn't that
Well,
right?
Well,
I think what he's asking is,
Did-
when he gets up to argue, does he argue for
For
60 days, or does he say the board's given 2 weeks?
This
How-
goes
I
back to
think-
the intent of what the board wants.
Yeah,
I think
Right.
That's correct, yeah.
I think what he's trying to say is if he does do that, do we want the city to say, no, we're gonna fight you against the 60 days? And if that's what you're asking, if I'm getting that correctly, I mean, I guess for me personally, it would be, yeah, I want you to fight that. I don't wanna, we're not giving the 60 days because that's what we're.
give him 2 weeks for it.
Right.
All right, so let me throw this out, is what I understand this board motion's all about. Will go tomorrow and argue against the 60-day stay or extension or whatever it is. If it fails, then there's 2 weeks there, and if it passes, there's 60 days there. Is that what everyone understands?
Yes,
Does that answer your question, Will?
yeah.
Well, I'll attempt to get him to withdraw the petition, preferably,
Right.
but, okay.
All right. Again, any other business for the board?
Can I move to adjourn?
You may.
I need a second.
Second.
We have a second, a motion and a second. Y'all will please vote.
Motion passes 17.
Thank you for